what we've got today is a quick example of aimed fire. In Battlegroup Kursk, there's like two different modes of fire. There's area fire and aimed, and that's what we're going to cover today is the aimed fire. Mostly I want to cover that one first because that usually involves tanks directly shooting at each other, and that's the best part of a good tank game is shooting at tanks. So we're going to just kind of run through an example, some of the mechanics behind it. We've got here on our table, over here we have a T-34, Russian T-34, and over here a German Panzer G model that are facing off against one another. So here we've got just a couple examples of obstacles you have to overcome in order to shoot at somebody. One of the first steps you have to do is you have to see if you can observe the enemy target. So one of the things we're going to check for is line of sight. Now in this example, you can't tell the difference too much, but this example here, this is a pretty tall hedge. The two vehicles, they can't see each other through the hedge. This is blocking the line of sight, so they wouldn't be able to shoot. Examples of where they could shoot would be possibly over this lower wall that we have, and then if the tank was on the other side, then you could say, possibly it's obscured, so you could still shoot, but you have to see if you can actually get a good visual, like I want to call it a visual lock, but a good sighting on your target. The reason why you want to check this when you do the aimed fire is when you do aim fire, it's like you're looking down the reticles. You're actually aiming and trying to hit a very precise target. You do this observation check because that's the game's way of simulating smoke, dust, dirt, debris flying through the air, vehicles moving, just things that would make it more difficult versus area fire. So that's one of the drawbacks to direct fire is you had to make an observation check. So we have a table that helps us with that. Here we have the observation table. This is broken down by category, whether it's infantry, deployed guns, or vehicle, aircraft. Since we're doing tanks, we would just take a look at the vehicle section, and we can take a look, and depending on the actions that the vehicle has taken, such as last turn or this turn, so if that tank had previously fired, we would say if it's a vehicle in the open firing, we automatically see it. If it's just in the open, say it was just moving, we would need to roll a 2 or higher in order to see it. If the vehicle is obscured in firing, such as behind maybe this low cover or at the edge of a woods, we would have to roll a 2 or higher on a die 6. And then if the vehicle is obscured, like just kind of sitting in some camouflage, you would need to roll a 3+ or higher to see it. And it's not range dependent, so you wouldn't have to measure, you would just have to look at the situation and then determine if you can see the target or not. Next thing that we got to do after we have spotted the target, we then need to see what do we have to roll in order to hit the target. So based on what we're doing, since we're talking tanks, we're going to be using the AP armor piercing column. The other columns we'll talk about later when we talk specifically about infantry. But for now, we're going to use AP armor piercing. So you're going to measure your range. So in this example, I usually measure, I like to measure like center to center, but this really here, you can just go to the front of the vehicles to get an approximation. So here I've got 15 inches approximately. So then when you look at your chart, you can look here at the range. So we can just kind of pick our category here. So we have the 10 to 20 inch category. And when I just cross-reference that over with the AP shell, I see here I've got to roll a 3 or higher on a die 6. So I have modifiers I need to add into that to get a final result. Right here we have the AP shell modifiers. So I would just simply look and I could see, if my target moved last turn, if the target is obscured, if they fired, or if I have moved, if the firer has moved or will move this turn, it's a -1. Then if the target is a deployed gun or an ace crew, if I had a skill ace crew, they would be a plus. So everything else is kind of a penalty. They are cumulative, but usually you're only going to have like 1 or 2 penalties at the most. So then if I had, let's say for example, my target had moved, and I'm moving this turn, then that would be a -2. So I'd actually need to roll a 5 or higher to hit on a die 6. So, alright, now, so in this example, if my vehicle being in that 15 inches, it needed a 3 to hit, I'm going to say, for sake of argument, that the German vehicle was waiting and my Russian tank had just moved into that position out from behind the wall. We're going to go ahead and throw the obscured in. So because he hadn't moved and he's obscured because of the wall, that'd be 2. So I need a 5 to hit or greater. So in this case, I rolled a 3, which you can't see. And since you can't see it, we'll pretend I rolled a 6. So I've hit. I know, it's cheating, but there's no one here to stop me. Now, if it hits, then we're going to move on to the penetration to see what kind of damage we've done, if any. So we can do this in one good take here. I have here the armor penetration table, and if you see, I've got cross-referenced here on the left. This is the penetration value of the weapon that's firing, and then these numbers across the top signify the armor value of the target you're shooting. And the targets have a front, side, and rear armor values. And we're going to look at the book in just a moment to take a look at the charts and see how you apply this. Over here is the results. So if you roll greater than this result here, this result in the chart is going to be with 2 die 6. So, you know, for example, if your vehicle had an armor piercing value of 2 and the target's armor value was a J, I'd have to roll it over 12 in order to destroy the target. That's not going to happen, so I could look at these other results over here. There's, if you roll less than, it's a glancing hit, no effect. If you roll equal to, the target is pinned and they get to take a morale test. So the thing to remember is, anytime you hit a vehicle with an armor piercing shot, they're going to take a morale check. And we'll take a look at morale as well. Another thing to keep in mind for hitting your target, so you can make this roll, a 6 is always a hit, a 1 is always a miss. So with all that information, we're going to take a look at the charts and let's see what happens when you actually hit somebody. Alright, so here we've got the book, and this table right here is showing the Panzer IV-G that we're using from our example. Since he's the one that shot, in here you've got your movement, the armor values, there's your front, side, rear. What's interesting is this in brackets represents if you have the Schürzen, which is the side armor. Otherwise, it's the other value. M is the one with the Schürzen. Rear. Okay, now here, this is what we're doing. Since we're the shooter, we had to look here at the armament. Right there, the 75, that is the main cannon that's shooting the AP. Here you've got the machine guns if we're doing area fire, shooting infantry. But we're going to look at this gun. Now, this is where you get a little bit of book flipping because they don't put all the data here in one spot. So I had to remember that the gun that this thing is shooting is a 75mm L43. Once I change this a couple pages out, I have the German gun data table. I then have to come down here to the light guns because it is listed as a light gun. And I'm going to look for that 75L, what I call it, I already forgot which one it was. Let's say it's a 75L43. That's how good my memory is. So now here we've got several bits of information. This HE effect column is great if you're doing area fire. That's the bursting from the high explosive round. So for HE effect, there's nothing on the AP column. So we're just going to stay on the AP column. Now what I had to do is look at my corresponding range versus my weapon type. So we were at 15 inches, so I have a 7 for penetration value. I'm going to need to know that here for that chart, which we're going to take a look at. Then what you got to do, if you're like me and don't have this all written down, you have to kind of flip over here now to the tank section. So now since we're shooting at a T-34 special stuff, armor value. Now I have to look here at the front armor and I see that the T-34 has a K for armor value. Alright, now that we've got the gun armor penetration value and that front armor value, I just make a cross reference to the K column and I see that I have a 6. So I have on 2 dice 6, roll a 6 or higher, and then consult my results chart. Alright, so my 2 dice 6, and I rolled a 6 exactly. So we're going to take a look at our results chart, and in this example, since I rolled equal to, the vehicle would then get a pin marker, which pinned, I know it's smoke, but just go with it. It's easier to see. Then what I got to do is check for morale. Since it's pinned, I now make a morale test to see if they stay pinned or rout or run away. So we have here on the other side of the QRS, the quick reference sheet, there is a section right here for morale. Trying to let the camera focus there. There, perfect. Now all you got to do is look at the vehicle column and roll a die 6. So for this example, since I pinned them, I'm now going to see what my morale test is. It was a 5. So I just look. What I do here is I cross-reference, so I take my 5, run across to the vehicle, they're okay. Now there are some special rules for if it's an elite unit, you know, some modifiers to the morale, but that's the basics of the morale. So I shot, I didn't penetrate the armor, I made a morale check. So the worst that happened to this Russian tank is it's pinned. Now, as we discussed in our previous video, pinning is still very important because the Russian commander can no longer assign that vehicle an order until he takes a battle rating counter to remove the pin marker. So that tank is effectively out of the battle for quite some time. It's not destroyed, so he can come back, but it is taken out of the fight. Now, the other thing to consider, when you give your fire order, you get 2 shots. So that was one of my 2 shots. Now, because I've already looked up the data, I already know that at this range, I needed to roll a 5 to see the target. But since I will roll a 4. Now, this is important. Some people forget this step. You actually have to roll for both the observation checks because you got to consider there's recoil on the weapon, smoke has come up from my pinning shot, so it's quite possible that that second round I would not be able to see the target. And then I also remember I needed to roll a 5 or higher to hit because it's the same requirements as the first shot. So I rolled a 3, but again, because it's my game, I rolled a 5, so I hit just because I want to see something blow up. Now, I remember that my weapon at this range had a 7 penetration, and the T-34 has a front armor value of K at this range. So I just consult my chart, and if I remember right, I needed at that a 6 or greater on 2 dice. And again, wow, I rolled the same. Okay, so according to the rules, you cannot pin a target more than once. However, I would still make the morale check. So let's just see if he gets a 1 or something goofy on morale. Alright, so let's take a look at the morale chart now. Now because I rolled a 1, I'm just going to look here. Vehicle, abandoned. So this tank got hit twice pretty good, and so the crew would effectively leave it. So that is the basics of your direct fire. What we're going to do is next time take a look at maybe some other modes of firing, start looking at moving. But if you have any questions about direct fire, or if you want to see something else next, just let us know. Put it in the comments, which would be down at the bottom of the video somewhere when we're done, because I don't know how to put the fancy captions up here. So just comments. And if you like it, let us know what you like. If you don't like what we're doing, then hit the like button anyway. Alright, thank you.